Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today I'll be looking at the M60, which is a rank 5 8.0 battle rating American medium tank, or main battle tank, I guess. As with all reviews, if there's a particular portion of this review you want to skip ahead to, feel free. They're all time-stamped down below. And if you want to hear the in-garage portion of this review, let's get started. So the M60 is the successor to the M48 patent. It was conceived off of that chassis and looks kind of similar. However, the key differences are increased armor and a 105mm gun, and also some differences just in terms of the hull. It's more squared off than the M48, and the turret is obviously different. The M60 is also the precursor to the M1 Abrams main battle tank, which is currently in service with the U.S. military. And this tank actually is still in service with countries such as Egypt, who still operate about 1,800 of these. This was a widely produced tank with approximately 15,000 being constructed across all of its variants, which there are 3 main variants. The M60A3 is kind of the one that maybe most recent. It was built in 1978. So, what is it like in War Thunder? Well, you look at what a main battle tank wants to be. It wants to be a heavy tank from the front and a medium tank from. It basically wants to have a medium tank's mobility with a heavy tank's armor and a kind of in-betweener gun, like a 105mm per se. And that's what the M60 has. Rank 5, 8.0 battle rating, very deserving of that battle rating. This is a machine I can see being bumped up when eventually I think the battle ratings are increased, like the cap is taken off and we start seeing like 9.0 battle rating tanks. This will be one of them. It's very strong at an 8.0 battle rating, but then again, that is the top of the battle rating chart. So, 46.2 ton machine, 705 horsepower at 2,400 RPM. This thing has medium tank mobility, 100%. It's quick, and it definitely has enough grunt in the engine to get you going where you want to go. 48 kilometers per hour top speed. Like most top speeds in War Thunder, that's difficult to achieve on most of the time without some help like gravity. But this tank will do upper 30s, low 40s on flat ground across relatively smooth terrain. It's definitely not a slow tank. It'll keep up with everything else. Maximum inclination, 40 degrees, standard. 41 degrees is, I think, the max, but 40 degrees, that's plenty. Turret rotation speed, 24 degrees a second. That's really, really good. Turret turns really, really fast. It's like most American medium tanks. The turret generally turns very quickly, and that can be very useful when you're being engaged by either multiple targets or you need to adjust very quickly in a match. Vertical guidance, 9 degrees of gun depression, 19 degrees of elevation. 9 degrees of gun depression is very good. 19 degrees of elevation is kind of standard. That's kind of what most tanks have, 19, 20 or so, somewhere in there. Pretty standard. So elevation is good. Gun depression is very good. You can pull off a lot of sneaky shots with this tank. And that brings us to kind of an interesting part of this tank, and that's the armor. On paper, I don't really like this armor. If you just took a screenshot of this bit right here, hull and turret armor, I wouldn't think the armor was very good, right? And it might not be. The armor might be overperforming. I can't confirm, but it seems that way. Or maybe people just aren't shooting in the right spots. Flash up the armor model. So from the front, right, we'll start with the hull, because the hull is where a lot of times you take some hits. Alright, so the upper plate. 93mm of armor. Okay, well that's not very good. But it is sloped back at 65 degrees. That's very good. 182mm of armor in the dead center, thanks to all that sloping. And it just gets better from there, all the way up to about here. Then it's 36mm, but this is sloped at 85 degrees. You won't penetrate that. So, don't try and shoot it there. Coming down to the bottom side of the hull, 143mm thick of armor. That's well over 300mm of lower plate armor right here. sloped back at 55 degrees. This will not get penetrated short of heat rounds, and I have actually been able to bounce heat rounds off this, or they just don't do anything. So maybe bounce is the wrong word, but nothing happens. Right? This is very good armor right here. Lower belly, 85 millimeters, sloped at 55 degrees, 207 millimeters effective armor. It's a very tough shot to hit right there. Right, and it's just way down there. If a tank's shooting down at you, or shooting like this, that's even thicker. That's even harder slope. So they're probably not going to penetrate right here. If they want to penetrate the front of your hull, they're going to be shooting in this area right here. And going for the upper plate is the best option. However, it is heavily angled. Lower plate, just don't shoot it here. This is the thickest. This is effectively one of the thickest spots of armor on the tank. So just don't shoot it here. Shoot it up here, or try and deal with the turret. The turret's interesting. It's just I'll just do it like this. So, front of the turret, you have a gun mantlet that's 114.3 millimeters thick, effectively 125 millimeters, thanks to a slight back slope of 25 degrees, which is cool. Actually, and if I probably do this, yeah, it's a little bit more than that, about 130. So that's cool. Behind that, you have the actual turret face armor, which is 178 millimeters. And you'll notice that there is a little bit of an overlap here, where the back of the turret face armor overlaps with this gun mantlet. So you have a lot of effective armor on the front face of this tank. It's pretty good, right? So shooting it in the very front of the tank is generally not a good idea on the front of this turret. You get out to the sides of the turret, 127 millimeters, but it is heavily angled, and this will be a very difficult shot to penetrate just because of the sheer sloping that's involved here. Heat round can probably deal with this kind of seam here, but I don't think they've had much success dealing with kind of this overlapped gun mantlet here. And a lot of just AP shells will bounce clean off the side because it's just too heavily sloped. Same on the other side here. So the front armor profile of this tank is actually pretty good, it seems. It's not great, and it's certainly defeatable, but for some reason people don't. IS-3, IS-4, even T-10s have consistently bounced off the front of my tank if I just point my chassis directly at them and point my turret directly at them. Where you run into trouble is when your turret is turned slightly, because now this starts evening out, and now that is penable by large caliber Russian guns and most German guns as well. So that can be an issue. But full flush straight on, this tank is tough. It's actually pretty tough. A lot of people for some reason go for the slower plate, but when they realize that this is actually one of the thickest, thickest armor sections on the tank, thanks to the sloping, I don't think they will. From the sides, I mean, it's a medium tank, basically. Well, I mean, it's a main battle tank, but the side armor is not the key. 74 millimeters, 76.2. You'll notice that the 127 extends around, but you'll also notice that that's not very much armor when you're flush side on. And it's actually in kind of armor belts here. 50 millimeters, 50.8. This helps reduce weight on the tank, which gives you that better top speed. But side armor 74 millimeters, rear armor 41, 41, 30. There's not much to talk about here. That's the rear of the tank. I mean, yeah, if you get the rear or the sides, you can detonate this thing, no problem. But the front is pretty good. And that's a big difference, right? The T-54's advantage was almost always that its front armor was actually decent for a very long time. Nowadays, that's less the case, right? But the thing is that the M60's front armor can deal with a few of the 8.0 battle rating Russian tanks, IS-3, IS-4, tanks that use AP shells generally. The front of this tank deals with them very well. Even T-10s who maybe haven't gotten the heat shell yet, are going to potentially struggle with the front of this tank. Even with the heat shells, I'm not sure. Because part of it is I haven't run into enough situations where I'm sure that that guy was firing heat. Okay, that guy fired heat. I know I bounced that. Just because it's not obvious what shell they hit you with a lot of times. So, but I have survived multiple T10 hits directly to the face. I've survived IS-4, IS-3, T-54s, you name it. When I get into trouble, it's because my turret was turned slightly and they hit me right here on the seam. And that causes me issues. Or I get hit in the side, or I get hit in the rear, things like that. But generally from the front, you don't really get knocked out in this tank. Alright. Which is good, because this thing has a really powerful gun. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say this is the best gun in the game, because the rate of fire is lower than the Leopard 1's gun. This is 10.2 seconds with a pretty decent crew. Leopard's gun is about 8 seconds, so there's a couple second difference there. So that can be, that's, you know, and that might be that my German crews are just better than my American crews, but I don't think that's the case. It's not 2 seconds worth, right? And my German crews aren't tremendous, right? They're good, but they're not great. So slower rate of fire, still faster than the T-54, I think. I actually need to check that because I know they buffed the T-54 not too long ago. So let's go look. 11.2 seconds. So yeah. And we'll actually, just to double check, because I know my crews are pretty good for my Russians just because they were the first set of tanks I played. 11.2 seconds. So still about 0.4 seconds faster than your good old T-54. So you have a rate of fire advantage, you have a caliber advantage, and you have ammunition advantage. And we'll look at that ammunition right now. So, pretty much this is basically the same gun you have on the Leopard 1. Right? The rate of fire is just a little slower. So you have very similar ammunition choices, likely just with different names. Right? You start off with this armor-piercing discarding sabot shell, 5.8 kilogram shell, 1478 meters per second muzzle velocity, 289 millimeters penetration at 10 meters, 282 millimeters penetration at 500, 245 millimeters at 1500, and 240 millimeters at 2000 meters. Pretty good penetration, all in all. It's basically kind of an APCR shell, and that's good penetration across the board. It's pretty good, right? It's not the best you can achieve on this gun, but that will get you the job done. Most tanks you face, that's enough penetration. You can penetrate the front of a Jagdtiger at 1,000 meters or more, kind of depending. It'll be good for the side of any tank you face at basically any range, and it'll get the job done pretty efficiently. Now, the M393 shell, this is a HESH shell, high explosive squash head shell, 15 kilograms, 730 meters per second muzzle velocity, 145 millimeters penetration at all ranges. I'm still not sold on this shell. I have used it. I have used it a little bit. And I reversed from my previous opinion that it's I don't know if I said it, but I pretty much said that I think it's useless, except for AAA trucks and things like that. Because it basically replaces the HE shell that most guns have. This is more useful than just that. Doesn't really have to penetrate to cause damage. However, we have a much better option, so I don't think this shell is that valuable, right? I would much rather have a stock of M456 shells, which is a high explosive anti-tank fin stabilized shell. This is a good shell. Same thing on the Leopard 1. They're both really good shells. 11 kilogram shell, 1173 meters per second muzzle velocity, and 400 millimeters penetration at all ranges. This is a good shell. It was good on the. It's part of what makes the Leopard 1 such a tremendous tank is you can pull off some ridiculous shots. And in one of the replays I'm going to show you a ridiculous shot that with any other shell would not have penetrated, but with this shell it does, and it knocks a tank out, which normally wouldn't be knocked out like that. So suffice to say, this shell is the best shell on the tank in my opinion. It has great damage potential and good muzzle velocity, good weight, and excellent penetration. Now, the downside of this shell is it's expensive as hell. 1,100 credits per shot. HESH is 270. This APCR it doesn't even have a price. It's free. That's cool. So yeah, that's expensive. It's difficult to run. Profits are possible, but it is kind of difficult. I have a premium account, and profits can sometimes be an issue if I don't kill many things or I don't hit many things, which can happen, but that's more just because I'm being bad or I'm shooting at things that aren't actually tanks. So yeah, the price point on this shell is a lot, but I think it's worth the cost, because I don't think you don't really make credits at the very highest tiers. I don't think you do, at least. I think you make them with premiums at kind of middle tiers, like rank 4 premiums, rank 3 premiums. That's kind of where you can make lots of credits. But not really at these super high, at the highest tier, at the 8.0 battle rating. You don't really make a lot of money. Your goal is to knock the tank out before it knocks you out, and this is the best shell for it. So this is what I use almost exclusively on this tank, because it just gets the job done right, and that's what I want. So that's the gun. Tremendously effective. If the rate of fire was the same as the Leopard, it would be tied for the best gun in the game. But it's not, so it's second best gun in the game, basically. 57 rounds of ammunition. You got a couple machine guns, which is cool. Cut down some trees. I do that to clear my lines of sight and things like that. And 57 rounds. I haven't ever used it all, but I have used quite a bit before. So, yeah, that's the gun. It's tremendous. Front armor's pretty good. Gun's pretty good. And the speed is pretty good. So this is an all-round good tank. Let's look at the X-ray. Something to note. There is ammo in the turret right here. I don't personally think that having ammo in the turret is a big deal in this tank, and in actually tanks in general at the 8.0 battle rating. Primarily because if they penetrate your turret, you're likely toast anyway. If an IS-4 penetrates your turret, you lose. Like, the shell's going to explode inside your turret. It's probably going to kill at least 3 of your crew members. And on a tank that only has 4 crew members, you're toast. You're done, right? In terms of armor protection, the ammo is behind the thickest armor on the tank. So it's actually pretty safe, I feel. Right? Ammo is generally not a huge issue, right? The real problem is when you get hit from the side. But that's the problem with every tank. Side armor isn't as good as front armor generally, except you're like a KV-1 or something like that. So, and there's no way to empty out all this ammo so that, you won't get wrecked by a shell that hits you in the side. I mean, basically, I don't take any ammo out just because I don't really see the value, because if they penetrate my turret, I'm toast. If they penetrate this section of my hull, I'm probably toast as well. There's just a few situations where the guns are pretty powerful at this tier, so if they penetrate, they generally cause you either huge problems or they just knock you out outright. So I don't really bother with it. And you could probably figure out how to take this ammo out. I guess you would need to unload, 6 shells maybe. So you could definitely do that and not feel bad about it, but I personally won't be. Crew layout, you have your driver sitting in between 2 stashes of ammo. That's got to feel nice. Loader. For some reason, this is called the aimer. Should be the gunner. They changed that recently, which is throwing me off. And then the commander sits up in the cupola. So 4 crew members. Kind of a standard American tank setup. You have your engine, your radiator, your fuel tanks, your transmission. All that stuff's in the back half of the tank. Something to note, because of this bump in the back of the tank, you actually cannot lower the gun that low in the rear of the tank. To the front and the sides, you have your full range of gun depression, but to the rear, no. You don't have very much gun depression. But that's because we have this radiator sitting on top. So, generally you don't have to shoot from the rear of the tank anyway. So, you really want to be front-facing in this tank, not shooting from behind. So, that's the M60 in the garage. Quick overview. Gun is amazing. Front armor is pretty good. Side armor is paper. Rear armor is paper. It's quick. It's fast. Gets the job done really, really well. So, let's move on to some replay, shall we? So here we are in the first replay. This is me driving my M60 in a simulator battle on Kuban. Now, there was only one day that I got simulator gameplay for this tank, and this was one of the replays I got. Ooh, first shot, hit the target, but it bounced off. AI anyway, it looks like. KV-1. That's definitely not a player. But, whatever. I'm loaded heat, firing all the heat, And my plan is to kind of go defend our cap zone, generally. I want to be in that area. Joined this game a little bit late, so I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I definitely want to move my way over to our cap and help defend, because I'm under the impression that the enemy are going to rush it. I mean, this is American versus Russians. Generally, Russian teams want to push because their tanks are pretty quick. Okay, time to start scanning. I see trees going down, which tells me something's over there. I don't really see anything else. And I kind of like this little position because I feel relatively safe. I could get waxed anytime, but it feels like I have a decent amount of cover. I got some shade. You know, maybe it hides me a little bit. But I'm going to back down this ridge and go around the other way, kind of move closer towards our cap. I'm going to start scanning again, because it's important in simulator battle to, one, try and find where your teammates are, and also find where your enemies are. Dropping down the hill, going to start moving towards our cap. No one's attempting to cap yet, but they must be getting close. And there's an M103 off to my left. He's an important person to keep track of. Looks like there's some type of aerial duel that just got won by the enemy, so that's a little unfortunate. Spotted something. Might be like a AI. No, there's something over there. There's something in this area. There definitely is. We just need to find it. Time to move on up a little bit. I don't want to just rush across this valley, but it might actually be the best move because there isn't anything obvious, and if I can get under that ridge, I can really clear this area out and not really have to worry. There's some very annoying AI. Killing these AI is actually useful because they won't keep shooting and giving away your position. That's the most annoying thing about AI, is they will keep shooting and they will keep basically lighting you up for the enemy. So I'm being cautious, but at the same time I am going to kill both of those AI. Just nailed one. Now I'm kind of checking my left. Basically the M103 has come up with me, so that's fine. I'm going to spin the gun around, line up on that AI, knock him out. And now me and this M103 are going to push forward over this hill. Doesn't really matter which one of us goes first. I'd rather he go first because I don't want to go first. I mean, you can get shot like that. That's silly. Generally, when you come up over a ridge, it's a good idea to have your turret at least facing where the enemy are likely to be. And this M103 has stumbled upon the rear of a T-10. And it looks like I'm checking over here to make sure that we don't have any unwanted guests. I thought I saw something, and there's that T-10. M103 looks like didn't have the gun depression to get the first shot off there. But we are both going to start laying into this guy. My first shell goes in. Looks like it got his radiator, set him on fire. That's good. M103 fires a shell as well. And now we're both just going to start laying into this guy. And this is actually an awkward situation to shoot at one of these things, because generally Russian tanks have a pretty big engine block, and it's actually kind of difficult to knock him out from the rear. I am pummeling his engine block, and I've set him on fire again. But it is kind of difficult to knock him out. Now, it would help if I knew more about kind of the T-10's anatomy, but there goes some more damage on him, and me and the M103 are pounding him. Basically, my goal, I wanted to keep him on fire just to ensure kind of a kill, but his engine, his transmission, it's all cooked. There's nothing in there. And basically, I'm trying to disable him right here, looking for the kill, but I don't know, it's very difficult. Knock out some more stuff, but I am going to just, I've realized that I just need to get up alongside him and just plant one into his side. Going to be the easiest way to deal with him. Because Russian tanks generally have kind of a forward side ammo rack that is pretty, generally the best place to get after him. So we're just going to park up next to this guy, line up the shell, and we're just going to put it right in. And there we go. Knocks him out just fine. So, I did spot another enemy moving down over there. That looks like an ally who is having some issues. But I can't see that enemy anymore. I know there's enemies in this portion of the map, the way I'm facing, kind of towards the eastern side. But I need to be careful while moving across this ground because it's generally pretty open. And until I kind of get down in these ditches, it's going to be pretty easy for the enemy to light me up. M103 just fired, hit something. But now, simulator battles, it's kind of an acquired skill, is situation, whereas that's a T-54 who just got toasted. T-54s generally, if you hit them in the front with this heat shell, they just explode because they're so compact and there's so many critical components all next to each other that hitting ammo or hitting a fuel tank or all kinds of stuff is just really easy. So they generally don't do that well when they get hit. Oh, spotted a tank moving. Oh, there he goes. First shell goes in, gets some stuff, but doesn't do anything to kind of slow him down. So he is going to get to move forward. Now, these AI are again lighting me up. That's kind of an issue for me. I need to deal with them just so they'll stop. You know, it's one of the most annoying things is when these AI are shooting at you. So I guess a lesson, I really don't want these guys shooting at me and alerting like whatever's over here that I'm here. So I'm going to knock out one. This other one I'm going to kind of ignore just because I'm in a hurry. But probably would have been prudent to take the time to knock that guy out as well. Or that AI out as well. Now I do notice the M103 there. So I don't feel a need to kind of go around to the front of this channel. And that's actually going to pay off. And you'll see why. Coming down over here, that looks like an IS-4, IS-3. It looks like an IS-4. I'm not going to be able to pull the shot from there. Going to have to come down and over to get the shot in. That shell didn't really do anything, but his momentum kept him moving forward. It doesn't look like he really knew where I was. Now he does, though. Put a shell into the kind of the back of his turret, knock him out, hit some ammo. That looks like another IS-4. He's slowly turning his turret, but my rate of fire is too good. See you later. Send the shell in. He was already pretty heavily damaged, it looks like. Knock him out. So that's two quick IS-4 kills. This thing does feast on them a little bit. Feasts on a lot of tanks. And the M103, it looks like, just annihilated the T-54. So that's this flank basically secure. Now, my hate for cap zones is well documented. I generally try to avoid them at all costs. However, in this case, I do want to get in here and at least reset the cap, or at least get it to 0. Capping the zone, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I have the ways of the enemy coming over here covered, but this is simulator battle. Planes are always a threat, so I don't really want to sit in there. And I'd much rather move forward and find some tanks to destroy. Shooting tanks is always nice. Oop, T-54. My first shell goes in, gets his engine, his fuel tank, his ammo. That caused him some serious issues. His first shell hits me. It looks like it went for my lower plate, bounced. My next shell goes in, and that's his cannon breach. He is basically unable to fight me anymore. 2 quick hits, he's pretty much toast. M103 looks like it's behind. I think that's an M103. My next shell goes in. But now we're going to take our time, really line up the kill shot. It wasn't a kill shot, of course, but he will die. I mean, I know his driver's one of the last crew members, but just right through the other cheek of the turret, no problem. He's toast. Only got to shoot at me once, partly because of the rate of fire, partly because my second shell damaged his stuff, his cannon breach, which made it impossible for him to fire, and he just got worked. So that's what I was talking about earlier, that the M60 will beat a T-54 simply because it usually survives the T-54's first hit. And if you survive the first hit, assuming you take a hit, you will win the engagement just because you're going to get 2 shots off before he gets his 1 shot off, or before he gets his next shot off. So that's usually an advantage and something you can take advantage of. Nope. That's an M47, that's an ally. Don't want to shoot that. And at this point in the match, not a whole lot happening. We don't really know where the enemy are. They're generally in plains, or it looks like the allies are generally congregating back towards the cap zone. We're going to cap that and then cap their base and move on with life. So let's skip ahead a bit, shall we? Skipping ahead to the end of the battle, and you can see the results screen there. Not much happened. The only damage I took that entire game was to my optical stuff, where my driver is. Very good game though. So let's move on to another replay, shall we? So here we are in a realistic battle on the Berlin map. It's domination, and I'm going to commit to trying to take the A capture point. I kind of like A, but I also kind of don't. It's difficult to get to. There are these like trenches and stuff you can use to kind of cover yourself, and the M60 is actually just tall enough to take advantage of this, in some places. Using by binoculars. Ooh, incoming shot. It missed. But I am going to try and track where it was. I'm actually using that building back there as kind of a reference point. And you can actually see that there's a T-54 there. Yeah. Was that speculation? Basically. But it looked weird, so I shot it, and it died. So, there we go. That's always a good way to start. He probably was not happy about that one. I wouldn't be. So the enemy's capping A. There's something in there, obviously. And I would really like to get in there and deal with it, whatever it is. Okay, so based on that gun, probably 120 millimeter. Or 122 millimeter, sorry. So, yep, there's an IS-3. First shell goes in. I take a hit from him, but I do cause him some damage. He starts trying to light me up with a machine gun. Gonna just sit here and take it. I know my rate of fire will beat his. Looks like I think a T10, an IS-4 actually, just came around the corner and planted a shot into my front. Did no damage. Okay, oh. That's something. Missed that shell, went a little low, hit the ground. But my rate of fire is very good. So I'm still going to be loaded in time to shoot these guys, and that is definitely a T10 if I'm not mistaken. Actually credited me a hit on the IS-4. That's weird. But it's an IS-4 and a T10. That's a little awkward, but they both fired, so I don't really have to worry about them. T10's backing up, shell goes in, detonates his engine, fuel tank stuff. Causes him some serious issues. He's knocked out. Someone called Artie on me. Must be a T-54 or something in the area. The enemy have capped A and are capping B. We own C. So I am a little worried about taking flank shots from B, but the ridge over there on the other side of the embankment is actually kind of protecting me. Or this side of the embankment between B and A is protecting me right now. So I'm in a decent spot. And notice that wreck is being moved. So I know the IS-4 is pushing. Shell goes in, blows up the IS-4. That's nice. Another nice kill before he could fire a return shot. Little things like that. And there's a T-54. First shell goes in. Like I said, T-54, generally if you penetrate the front, you cause them some serious problems. But you can see the power of this tank. How many shells have I taken to the face? 3. Now 322 millimeter. Well, yeah, IS-3, IS-4, and a T-10. It's pretty good. And I've actually taken 0 module damage. And I'm only a few shells lighter. So, is this tank really strong? I think so. It has a capability. Okay, before I say that, notice that I'm not going to sit in the cap circle. I'm basically going to say this every time. I almost refuse to sit in the cap circle nowadays when it's the enemy color. I'll run in, start decapping it, and then back out until it's 0, and then I'll move in and start capping it, just because that's more time I can stay away from the cap circle. More time the better. More time out of the cap circle the better. But as I was saying about this tank, the key thing that this tank has that other tanks like the T-54 and the Leo 1 do not have at the moment is the ability to survive other nations' heavy tanks to the front. What do I mean by that? M60 can survive an IS-3, IS-4, T-10 shell direct hit to the front. Can survive it, and often does. Leo 1? No. Leo 1 will be destroyed. A T-54? Not really. Used to be the case, not really anymore. M103 deals with them pretty well, as does the Mouse. Mouse can deal with T-54 pretty good. So you kind of have the M60 in this kind of, well, almost weird place where it's just really potent because it can do something that the other two can't. And that's namely, it actually has the protection to be pretty durable from the front. Now, the armor might be overperforming. It might be grossly overperforming. I don't know. Not until the patch notes tell me otherwise. But the gun is excellent. At the moment, the armor from the front is really good. So, this is just an all-round, really, really powerful machine. And the fact that I can sit in front of an IS-4 or an IS-3 and take a hit to the face, and it might also be that they're not shooting me in the proper spaces. You know, we're going to look later, and you'll see that I have non-penetrating hits on my lower chassis. You know, my lower plate type area. And we already looked at that. That's likely to be, with the sloping, the thickest armor on my tank. And they are shooting me there, and it bounces. Well, I mean, sure, yeah, that makes sense. Now this is a interesting shot here. Come around this corner. I'm using the corner to try and find this IS-3 who's in the cap circle. I didn't know it was an IS-3, but now I do. I have the shot sent it in. It knocks him out. What the heck? Since when? That's kind of the power of this heat shell. Right? I hit him relatively plumb on the side of the turret. It was a very awkward shot, very small shot. He was angled. And it destroys his tank. Primarily because he had ammo in the turret. But that's very awkward for him. And that's the type of shot that you can pull off with this gun and the ammunition choices. And should it be possible? I don't know. It's definitely awkward for him, and definitely something to be concerned about. But I don't know. There's just I partly feel that this tank is overperforming a lot, but the gun certainly isn't. I don't think the gun is overperforming at all. I think this is just what the gun is as it stands. I think the armor might be overperforming, but oh, this is gonna hurt. Well, no, it didn't. Set him on fire, but oh well. It's always good. But as I was saying, if the armor is truly acting as it should, this thing is, in my opinion, unstoppable. This is the tank I want to have in my lineup. If I can have an M60 in every 8.0 lineup I make, I will have an M60 in every 8.0 lineup I make. Give me an M60, a Leo 1, an M103, probably, I don't know what else I'd take. Probably a T-54 for a 4-tank lineup. I think that's a pretty solid lineup. I don't know if I want the Mouse, just because the Mouse is a good tank, but that was the most damage I took the entire game. It did break just about everything on my tank, which is unfortunate. Gonna have to repair this. You can see the non-penetrating hits there in the lower plate. Now, I don't really know where the enemy are going to come from. And at this point, I'm kind of just testing what's actually still working on my tank. My coaxial 30 cal is working. My 50 cal is not. So most of my air defense is kind of gone. I'm pretty convinced that the enemy are going to be coming from behind me. So I've spun my turret around to kind of deal with that direction. But because we are capping C, we are about to win the game. And I'm more concerned about that. Hostile team is capping C. That means an enemy just entered it. I need to spin my turret around. And he did just knock out one of my friends. Or one of my teammates, really. And I do see him right at the end, but whatever. It was a fun game. And that's the best example of M60 armor I can give you. Name me another tank that would have survived that situation against an IS-3, a T-10, and an IS-4. Right? It's, I mean, is the armor overperforming? Maybe. And that'll be something we see with time. But if it isn't, M60 is the tank. But I'll save that for the final opinion. So let's move on, shall we? Alright, so opinion time. What do I think of the M60? I think this is the... I'm going to say this is the strongest tank in the game right now. It's arguable. It's debatable. I think tier for tier, where this thing sits, it is the strongest tank. It has a shell that penetrates everything. It has good speed. It has front armor that's actually effective against most of its opponents, and in my experience. And it's just an all-round good tank, right? T-54s can struggle with this thing. Haven't run into many Leopard 1s because a lot of times the team setups are Russian versus American and Germans. And that's a pretty... I like that matchup. That's actually kind of a good matchup for this tank. It means that Leopard 1s aren't shooting at you. T-10s can shoot at you, but for some reason they just don't do a lot. I mean, you saw an example. And the gun is just really good, and it has a faster rate of fire than the T-54. This is just an all-round really good tank. And this is definitely the first 8.0 battle rating tank you should get. Easy, hands down. I think it... Well, I mean, because if you look back at the history, one of the reasons that the M103 was phased out was you had this thing coming in. You know, the M103 was getting phased out. They designed this thing. They threw it out there. This basically achieves the same goal as the M103 while being on a much more flexible package. The M103 is a great stable mate, running mate with this thing, though. I love running my M60 and my M103. If my M60 gets knocked out, I jump in the M103. Because there isn't anything that those two tanks really can't handle nowadays in War Thunder. The heat shells have really opened up these guns. I mean, the M103's AP shell was already pretty good, but the heat shell just absolutely annihilates people. And the same thing with the M60 shell. These are very much so tanks you can just beat people up with. M60, I feel, will definitely receive an increase in battle rating when it's available. Like the second, kind of the same thing with the Leopard 1. The second it's available, where they make it so that tanks can be 9.0 battle rating, this tank will be a 9.0 battle rating. It's just a really, really good all-around tank. You know, it has medium tank maneuverability, has, honestly, I think, kind of better armor than the M103. For some reason, I don't really know why. You know, I haven't been able to pin it down. The lower plate maybe is less obvious of is a target people want to shoot but doesn't actually penetrate. But like IS-3, for example, don't kill me in this tank, but they destroy me in my M103. So I'd rather be driving this thing. Yeah, it's just, this tank kind of just checks all three boxes. You know, those three kind of factors of a tank is the gun, which is kind of its own standalone thing, basically. Gun is great. Speed and armor are mutually exclusive generally. And this thing doesn't have great armor, but it has good armor. And it has above average speed. I'm not going to say great speed, but above average speed. So what can you complain with that kind of trifecta of the package? You know, it's a very good all-round tank, and easily my favorite 8.0 battle rating tank. The reason I favor it over the Leopard 1 is the fact that I can face an IS-3, IS-4 directly, and T-54 in the face, take their hit, and return fire. Leopard 1 really can't do that. But the Leopard 1 also is able to pull off some more sneaky tactics, because it just can. It's a Leopard 1. It's sneaky, right? This thing has a higher profile and generally feels less... It doesn't feel as fast, basically. But this is a really good tank. This should be your first 8.0 battle rating tank for the Americans. Easy. Hands down. No problems. Do it. And that'll conclude this review. I hope you found this review useful. I hope if you're struggling to knock these things out, hopefully I maybe gave you some pointers, and hopefully I maybe showed you a way you can do it. And hopefully when you get this tank, you will enjoy it as much as I have. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.